Hello world of YouTube and welcome to my listening log update for April 2020. We have 11 albums to get through. Some stuff that I was hyped for, some stuff that was a surprise, some requests on the docket, just a whole slew of goodness. So let's go ahead and dive on in. The first album that we're going to be talking about is called Fluid Existential Inversions by the band Intronaut. It was a request by Rockin' Movies with Tyler, formerly Random Rock and Real Riffs and Reviews. And this is a progressive metal record that has some sludgier, murkier tendencies. And those parts I like. I like the really murky production on here. I love how the opening track, Procurement of the Victuals, has this really dizzying effect to its guitar production. Like, the riff work is just spellbindingly tight, and the sludgy production really enhances the feeling that I know the band is probably trying to go for. And that's on a couple other tracks on the record, like The Call, and I think it's Tripolar. And that's probably my favorite aspect of the record. The drum work as well is pretty solid. It's a relatively, pretty straightforward progressive metal release in that regard. My biggest issue with the project as a whole are the clean vocals on tracks like Pangloss and Check Your Misfortune. Just a lot of the clean vocals as a whole don't do anything for me, but on those tracks in particular, they're just especially bland in my opinion. Or when they break into the, again, very traditional in a lot of contemporary progressive music, the gent-filled sequences or the gent-influenced sequences where it's just a lot of polyrhythms with the guitars kind of palm muting a lot. That stuff feels really played out to me, so it's not really something that I aesthetically really enjoy personally, unless it's done with great effect. Like, Meshuggah usually typically still does interesting stuff with that, but even when they do it, it's usually in their own style. A lot of the stuff on here feels more in line with a lot of stuff that a lot of bands are doing nowadays, and it just doesn't do anything for me. Like a lot of stuff from the last Tesseract record, a lot of the gent influenced stuff felt more in line with what was on here, and I don't have any problems with certain aspects of gent, but when it's done, like, when it feels, like, out of place, like it does on here, it stands out and it sort of waters down the experience. Like I said, when they get super angry, when the growled vocals come in and they're just screaming while the guitars are just fucking pummeling you, I love those moments. Those moments are really, really good on this release, but I feel like as a whole, across the board, this record waters itself down in ways that I feel like they didn't need to do to help themselves stand out. Whereas the last Bong Ripper record also delved in some sludgier, muggier tendencies. It didn't really water itself down with those attributes, and I feel like that's what sets it apart above a record like this. But this record's fine enough. If you enjoy sludgier metal music and you don't mind some sort of idiosyncrasies seen in progressive metal, you'll enjoy this thing. I think it's solid enough as it is. It's nothing too terrible. I'm probably sitting with this at like a 6. I've toyed between a 6 or a 7, but I'm leaning more towards a 6 personally. It's fine. It's just nothing that as a whole wowed me. On the opposite side of that coin, I feel like Code Orange have expanded upon Forever and made an even more intense listening experience with Underneath that I am absolutely loving. They take the digital aesthetic that, again, had some roots in Forever and, like, made them so much more. The chopped up digital glitchy parts on tracks like In Fear and You Alone are so different and feel like something that a band like Fear Factory would have at least attempted at some point in their career, and this feels like sort of the offspring of a lot of bands that were doing digital influenced metal in like the 90s and the 2000s, like Fear Factory with, again, those tracks that I mentioned, or Static X on tracks like Sulfur Surrounding. The digital atmosphere of that feels very in line with a softer moment that Static X would have done, or Who I Am. Their digital musings on that feel very in line with like early Linkin Park in a truly forward-thinking way. Like, this is so visceral and heavy. Like, the riffs on here are so beefy. It sounds like the band is just tearing apart the song with its teeth. I like the dynamics on this project a fuck ton, because I like when they get beefy and big, and I don't mind the softer moments. I think that they're pretty good. I mean, this album is, by and large, a great continuation of their sound. It is super, again, digital. I love the digital metal aesthetic. I did a playlist recently on the Patreon, and I put one of the songs on here, and it's supposed to be this, like, digital / just hellscape metal playlist. And, I mean, there's a song on there because I love how intense this thing gets. Like, I love the big moments, the big, super beefy moments. They really are good at getting you pumped up and ready to just dive head first into anything. I like this record a lot. I like that Code Orange have continued to forge along as one of the more interesting bands in their genre. You know, I like that they've sort of taken the torch of digital metal, because while I think Fear Factory is one of the most consistent bands in their genre and have, you know, continued even in their late career to put out some pretty solid stuff, they haven't dropped anything in a while. And I am waiting with bated breath for them to drop something, but at least I have Code Orange to at least drop something similar that's different enough to make it feel like a fresh spin on that aesthetic. I think this record's great. I think it's unsettling at points. It's really eerie. The percussion, the industrial percussion, which you guys know I fucking love, is super well produced. The production on here is so fucking fine. Whether it's the heavy stuff or the light stuff, this is just a great release all around. One of my favorite metal records that's dropped so far this year. I'm giving it an 8. It's a great release, and I feel like if you haven't listened to it and you like bands like Fear Factory or Static X or even early Linkin Park, you'll enjoy some of the aesthetics, at least, on this project. If you like bands like Linkin Park, you may not like the more intense points on here, but they're a good point of reference for some of the softer points on the record, for sure.
I want new friends, but that I want me.
And continuing down that thread, the Strokes are fucking back, baby, with the new Abnormal. This is an instant favorite of mine. Like, I love this project so very much. You know, I feel like it is them harnessing ideas that they toyed with on records like Angles, with some of the more 80s leaning inspiration, but they doubled down on it on here, and it just, like, they fleshed it out in ways that are so interesting. I love a majority of this project. I think it's, like, their strongest release in a while. Not to say Angles or Come Down Machine were outright bad, but, I mean, this is, like, a whole nother ballpark. I mean, the 80s infused stuff like the drums on the Adults Are Talking, or the overall guitar tone on Selfless, or the synth sounds on Brooklyn Bridge to Chorus and Why Are Sundays So Depressing just feel like expansions on like an older aesthetic, or Bad Decisions as a whole feels like a slice of like 80s pop rock in the best way. I love their infusions of synths across the board on this. I think that they sound the tightest they have in a while. Julian sounds reinvigorated after doing those records with the Voids. This whole project just feels like the Strokes reborn, and I love it. I love this project so much. Every time I revisit it, my love just grows for it, because I love the sorrowful mournfulness on At the Door, or on Not the Same Anymore. Again, his playful kind of somber delivery, you know, but At the Door is this just gem of a fucking song. It's growing to be one of my favorite Stroke songs, if not like already on there. I love the synths on there. I love that chorus. It's so beautiful. The band like opens up on it, and it's stellar. It's a release that I've loved. I was already hyped for from the first two singles, but I've loved those songs and the record as a whole the more that I sit with it. I'm giving it a 9. It's that good, guys. Like, it is incredible how much of a comeback, again, from a band that hasn't put out like anything terrible in my opinion, but like this is just a whole notch above, man. Like, I'm consider me wowed. Like, holy shit. This is actually my introduction to Soccer Mommy. I'm not really familiar with the band's material. I had seen that they popped up on some friends' lists of like albums that they really enjoy, and like John put it on his albums of the decade list. And I've since this album has come out, I've seen a lot of people talk a lot about this band, and so figured I'd check out Color Theory. One of my subscribers said that it was their album of the year so far, and I think it's all right. It's a solid enough indie 90s influenced pop rock record. Like I don't mind the dreary guitars that coat a lot of this thing. I like it, especially on Night Swimming. I love the catchier moments of Crawling in My Skin and Circle the Drain. I think the opener Bloodstream is fine. I like the cadence and pacing of Yellow Is the Color of Her Eyes. Like the writing on that song is nice. I don't mind the vocalist's vocals. They're very akin to bands like the Cardigans, in a cutesy sort of dream poppy kind of way. I think this record's fine. It didn't really blow me away. I don't think this is necessarily the best introduction to this band, given I've seen other records of theirs get higher praise, and I'll probably end up checking those out. But this wasn't terrible. It wasn't the worst thing I've heard in my life. I feel like I walked away from this enjoying more aspects of it and the production of it more than other releases I've heard this year. If you like indie pop, or if you like catchier indie music that has a little bit more of a drearier twist, like if you want to hear a more polished version of what Grouper was doing in like 2008, this is a pretty solid enough release. I'd give it like a 6 out of 10. It's fine. It's moments that I liked, I really enjoyed, but as a whole, the project kind of underwhelmed me.
Was I ever good enough for you?
Honeymoon, however, was a great first taste for Beach Bunny, because this record is catchy, it's well produced, and it's fun. It's well balanced. It has a good sense of vibrancy in its sound. I mean, from the opener Promises burst into vibrancy, this band kicks off this record with some energy and some emotional potency that is a thread throughout the entire release, whether it's continuing that energy on tracks like Cuffing Season, which seem to be a little less about wanting somebody and more being too close to somebody, or the track California, which is more sorrowful and reflection in how you used to love somebody, or you still love somebody but they don't love you anymore, or the more toned down moments like April or Rear View, which has this incredible climax that I wish kept going. Like, there are a few moments on here where I feel like they should have just kept it going just a little bit longer. And the end of Rear View is one in particular that I just like, when that crescendo happens, you just want it to keep ringing for so much longer than it actually rings for. And it's upsetting. I love how even though the record is filled with this sadness that's drenched in these more optimistic sounding tracks, the album spins itself around into some more optimistic tendencies, like the closer Cloud 9, that is just this bright, shimmery, cute little love song that, while the record is filled with sadness and mournfulness and reflection, it ramps it up to a much more positive note that I feel like is a good closer and bookends the record really well with Promises. It's a record about growth, seemingly, and you can feel that growth as the record goes on. I love this project a lot. I think it's really good. While there are moments that I feel like could be stretched a little more, stretched a little better, it's a solid release. If you like really power pop indie rock with a sense of sadness and almost an emo tinge, give this a spin. It's honestly very good. I'm giving this an 8 out of 10. There's always somebody who tries to keep strange metal alive. You know, bands like the Tony Danza Tap Dancing Extravaganza and our Rest of Bear ones have come and gone. Igorrr has been at it for a while now, and on his latest album, Spirituality and Distortion, he keeps it thriving. There's some issues I have with the project, but honestly, I like this better than my introduction to him, which was his previous record, Savage Sinusoid. My biggest issue with his music as a whole is a lot of his production is way too milquetoast for how weird he truly gets. I like the weird aspects of this record. Like, I like the small interlude Very Noise. I like the jitteriness on tracks like Downgrade Desert, and how fucking bizarre tracks like Nervous Waltz and Musette Maximum, which blend accordion and breakbeats with these heavy metal passages. I like that he incorporates like throat singing and weird opera on this as well. This record has a lot of elements that I like, that I feel like he harnesses his weirdness a little better than on the previous project, but I still don't think it's like true peak excellence. It's really good, and I like how bizarre this record truly is, and if you like weird metal, or if you like avant-garde experimental shit, you'll find something to like on here. He also infuses like regional sounds, like on Camel Dance Floor and on Himalayan Massive Ritual, which has this really soft opening that builds to this super heavy moment. It's the 7-minute crawl that is one of the more tame tracks on here, but still has his own form of bizarreness to it. This record's honestly very, very alright. I think that it's just a notch better, but it's still just shy of true excellence. I'm giving this a 7. It is very solid, and I feel like I said, if you like weird acts, like Mr. Bungle, or any of the other bands that I mentioned, if you're a fan of, like, Frank Zappa, and you like sort of people doing music ironically, you'll enjoy bits of this project, because there's some good stuff on here. I got into shopping on their previous record, The Official Body, and I love their blendings of post-punk and surf rock in a sort of B-52 sort of way, because they have a male and female vocalist. And on All or Nothing, they continue that prospect in a very good way. They kind of take an if it ain't broke, don't fix it approach to their albums, it seems. But honestly, I'm fine with that. It's still a very, very solid release. If anything, I like some of the sonic ideas a little more on here than on The Official Body. It makes it a little more unnerving. Some of the unsettling tones on tracks like Initiative and Lies give this sort of unnerving feeling that tracks like Follow Me, which has this paranoid sense to its lyrics about being always watched on CCTV, really grounded in a sort of reality. The title track as well has this incredible hook to it. The choruses on this record just seem a lot more hooky and memorable than they were on The Official Body. This is a record that I enjoy more, if only because the production, while seeming a little more frail, is improved by some of the synthetic injections, and again, some of those unnerving bass lines and melodies that they pull into the mix. This is a really great record that if you enjoy The Official Body, or you like bands like the B-52s and you want sort of contemporary twist on their sound, check out All or Nothing. It's honestly a pretty solid release. I'm giving this an 8 out of 10. Radiohead guitarist Ed O'Brien has finally decided to put out a solo outing titled Earth. And honestly, what I like about this record the most is, one, it feels in line with some of the solo stuff Radiohead artists have put out already, like especially some of Tom's work, but it doesn't sound carbon copy. You can just tell that they're in a band together for a reason. They draw from similar influences, like electronic dance grooves, and not necessarily a sense of melancholia, but their vocals sit in a similar timbre, so it can evoke a similar effect. But what I like about Earth is that it does stand so boldly away from Tom's solo work and Johnny's solo work, and I think that it's a very gratifying listen. There's some great hook work on here, like on Shangri-La and Deep Days. Deep Days sounds like it could be a Benz cut, like an off-cut from, like, or an offshoot, at least, from the Benz's sound because of its guitar work and its production. And I like that he takes the idea of these longer, drawn-out electronic tracks like Brazil and Olympic and turn them into their own thing. Olympic straight up sounds like it could be a 90s era U2 cut, but again, made in a different way. I love the groove on that song. It's actually a song that I immediately latched onto because I love the groove on it. I love the overall textures and sounds on the track itself because it's very vintage sounding in a very cool way. And not only that, but a lot of the guitar playing as a whole is just very pretty. The guitar lines on Long Time Coming and Sail On are gorgeous. Ed is a great guitar player, and I love that he lets that shine on this project. I think that this goes toe-to-toe with some of the other Radiohead solo projects for sure. It's better than some of Tom's solo work, absolutely. But I feel like it gives him a chance to have his own voice in a way that's very peaceful and serene. It's almost new age in some senses, and some of the ideas that he's singing about. And I love that about it. This is honestly a very good record. If you like mellow acoustic music with some sense of artfulness and some dance-driven energies injected into that, you'll enjoy this project a lot. I was honestly a little surprised, if only because I didn't know what to expect. Because Ed's never really done anything, like, super bold like this, and I appreciate the fact that he is showing his talents a lot on this project. Like, I'm giving this an 8. This is an incredible record. If you, like I said, if you enjoy what I was talking about before, you'll enjoy this project full stop.
Kick me under the table all you want, I won't shut up.
This album isn't new. It's not doing anything super groundbreaking musically, but it is still very good. Fetch the Bolt Cutters, Fiona Apple's first album in 8 years, sees her doing this DIY sort of setup, giving this lo-fi edge to these piano, slam beat poetry, experimental songs without losing a sense of poetic catchiness. You know, I like the sort of rugged, rootsy approach that she took to her production. I like that on some of the songs. You can hear her dogs barking. Like, there's a real at-home feel to this project. And coming from a name like Fiona Apple, I think she pulls it off very, very well. I do like the sort of yearnfulness and the weirdness on tracks like I Want You to Love Me and For Her. I like the spacey nature of Cosmonauts. I love the catchiness on the title track and on Shamika and on Relay. There's a good set of dynamics on this project that I feel like are pulled off very, very well. I know others have talked about it, but the Tom Waits influence is heavy, and given we haven't had a Tom Waits project in fucking forever, I'm glad that there's an artist tapping into this aesthetic, because I think she does it very, very well. I like the poetic nuance on a lot of the lyrics on here, like on Relay, or on Ladies. This record as a whole is just pulled together very, very well. I don't think it's perfect. I can see why some may be turned off from some of the experimental edges. I honestly don't mind it, though. I think that just as a whole, it's a very well-rounded project that shows a bunch of different facets under the umbrella of experimentation. I'm probably sitting with this at a 9. Again, I don't think it's perfect, but I do enjoy this record a lot, and I feel like it is worth a handful of the praise that it's been giving.
Coming at me with a camera, see me and become a stammerer, cause I am the one with the stamina.
It's another year, which means we get another Tech 9 record. And Tech's latest record, Enterfear, is keeping in the same lines that Nina kind of left him off on, with a tight set of tracks. I mean, this album is still a little bloated at an hour, but it kind of flies through its runtime pretty swiftly, with a lot of features that he's been working with a lot lately, like Chris, obviously, and King ISO, and this artist Landon Fire is on this project a handful of times, and Nave Monho. So as far as the feature list goes, it's certainly not as flashy as he was working with at the beginning of last decade, but I feel like it works better for him. And I feel like a lot of the production on here works incredibly well in his favor. It's more in line with the special effects production, but it feels a little different, and I enjoy that about it. I feel like where this record falters are some of the subject matter. It just doesn't hit me. Like Dr. Shabazz, I get it, Tech. You're getting old. I guess there's rumors, or you've said that you're going to retire soon, which I don't blame you. You put your time in hip-hop. You don't really need to make music anymore. But tracks like Dr. Shabazz kind of symbolize why you maybe need to tighten your records up a little bit, because it's a song that's just really not good. But I do like tracks like Angel Baby, where he talks about near-death experiences, and I like that it has a story-driven nature. There are other story-driven tracks in here as well, like Leave It on the Flow, which talks about Tech having a threesome, and it gets a little weird. I like Snake and the Batman. It's a nice little story-time skit. And I like the track with Flatbush Zombies, Look What I Did. I think everybody there presents some heat. And I'm glad that since Tech did a song with them, they did a song with him, because it's interesting to hear Flatbush on this type of production that's not very in line with their typical stuff. But I think they pull it off very well. Honestly, all in all, I think that this record is very good. I feel like it's one of the stronger releases Tech has put out. I just wish Tech would tighten it up a bit and maybe stop dipping in some of the idiosyncrasies he's known for, like weird song topics like Smell Good and Dr. Shabazz. The tail end of the record is pretty solid, with him exploring ghosts and spirituality. It's a little weird, but it fits better than some of the other odd subject matter. I'm feeling a 6 out of 10. I feel like it's a still really solid release. It just needs a little tightening up, which is my problem with a handful of Tech's records post-2012. And the last album we're going to be talking about this month is Trivium's What the Dead Men Say. Now, Trivium
is sort of in a similar lane of a band like Killswitch Engage in that they are one of the more consistent bands in their scene. But what sets Trivium apart is that they have done a good job at sort of branching out their sounds into different avenues, and while I don't think every single experimentation has landed, I feel like they've have a pretty solid set of records in their discography, and I liked The Sin in the Sentence, their previous record, a lot. I thought it was a great return to form for them, and saw them broadening their horizons in ways that made sense for their sound. And on What the Dead Men Say, they seemingly take a more reflective approach to songwriting and song structure by having these songs that sound more in line with their stuff from like Shogun and pre-Shogun, like on the intense moments of Catastrophist and Among the Shadows and Stones and Scattering the Ashes, while harnessing the hooks that made records like Shogun and The Sin in the Sentence really well harnessed, like on the title track What the Dead Men Say and on the first single of the album, Catastrophist. I feel like this record isn't perfect, but I feel like it is a good step above The Sin in the Sentence and provides listeners with a great point of reflection, not only just sonically but lyrically, because they talk about the sort of times that we're in and how bleak it really can be at times. And again, not perfect. Some of the tracks I don't like on here. While the bass on it is really good, I don't like the track Bleed Into Me too much. It feels more of like an expansion on aspects of their discography that I think are weaker. And while I don't mind when they get mellower, this song in general just didn't resonate with me all that well. And while I like that they're getting bolder with their progression, like on Catastrophist and Amongst the Shadows and the Stones, I think Sickness Unto You is the weaker of those tracks. It's fine enough, and it has some good riff work in it, but as a whole, it didn't hit me as hard as other aspects of the record. But this is still a very great record that is, again, a nice step above The Sin in the Sentence, and it almost acts as a victory lap for the band, because again, they dip into pools that they haven't dipped into in a while and create a cool-ass record in the process. I'm giving this album an 8 out of 10. It's honestly one of the more solid releases in their catalog, and I am honestly shocked at how great it is. If you like Trivium, you would probably love this record even more than I do. But either way, that's going to wrap up this listening log update. If you did enjoy it, be sure to give it a like. If you want to see more of my music, gaming, and general nerdy content, be sure to subscribe. Special thanks to my patrons. If you would like to join their ranks, linked in the description is my Patreon. You get early access to content, exclusive content, and you help drive the community. Up now is this month's playlist, which is a hip-hop centric one involving 2 pieces in hip-hop. If you want to check out the listening log as well and see what's on my docket and what's on my radar and see what you might want to suggest, it's linked in the description. Either way, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Viral Rack. You guys have good days, life situations, and I'll see you another day.